Friends, I am joined by another one of my friends. Welcome, Kate, to the podcast.
Hello.
How does it feel to be in here?
It's exciting. I'm really excited.
I'm so glad you said that. Everybody comes in here and they're like, I'm a little nervous. I'm like, why? We're literally friends.
Yeah, it's not going to be anything we haven't talked about before. So
I know. I texted you. I was like, can we have that like same conversation that we basically had at a bar, but on the podcast?
Sure.
So that's what we're doing.
Yes.
I brought you on here because you can give some more insight. So we are different in age. I'm 31.
I'm about to be 39.
Yes. So we have like you have more life experience than I do in some situations.
Yeah, a little bit.
And you've been previously engaged.
Twice?
Yes.
Twice.
So you've had just a lot of experiences in the realm of relationships, dating someone now, just so many things. So I wanted to bring you on to provide even further insight as someone who's a little bit older and who's been going through so much of the same things as me, just on a different scale. So give us a little like dating history backdrop.
So like you had said, I've been engaged twice. So the whole reason I live in the South now, is because of a boy. I was dating a guy. We were in San Diego. He was getting out of the Marine Corps. He's from Alabama. And he's like, oh, let's go. Just graduated university. And I thought, why not? This is a life experience. And so I moved to Alabama. And ironically, the day he proposed, I had called my girlfriend that morning and I was like, I think I'm going to break up with him. Like, I'm miserable. I hate this relationship. I'm ready to move on. And she was like, no. Like, it's fine. Everything's fine. And yeah, then he proposed that night and it was horrible. He grabbed the wrong hand. I didn't even say yes. I think I might have said no, but there was like so much commotion that like nobody knew what was happening. So we were engaged for a little while. Didn't work out. Then I ended up meeting another guy. We broke up, obviously. Met another guy, moved from Mobile to Tuscaloosa with this guy, and we dated for like 7 or 8 years before we finally got engaged. That engagement was also, I actually said yes that time. Let's preface that.
Okay.
I said yes that time.
We have growth in the engagement.
Yes, yeah, you know. But it kind of went downhill. Like, there were just issues within our relationship that he couldn't get over, I couldn't get over. We did couples therapy. We did all this stuff and we couldn't make it work. So I actually got a phone call from somebody here in Nashville and they were like, hey, could you interview somebody for us for this job? And I was like, sure. Or you could just give it to me. I'll do it. And they were like, really? And I said, yes. And I moved to Nashville. So the first time I moved to a city was not for a boy, was very nice.
For your own career.
Yes. And then, then it was just dating during COVID and like dating in a new city where I didn't know anybody. And it's been a journey.
Yes,
it's been a very large journey.
Which is what we've talked about a whole lot, just some of the similar experiences. I want to go to these engagements a little bit because you have such, like, who you are is so joyful, but still, like, you're still optimistic, but there's also pain and there's also hard emotions that have come with all of that. So you're not void of any of that, but for someone who has gone through 2 broken off engagements, like, you're still optimistic and you're still hopeful.
Yeah.
So when you broke off those engagements, like, what was that like for you? Were you just like kind of walk me through your feelings and your experiences that you were having, and they're probably different for each one. So walk me through each one.
The first one was just like, literally I was sitting, I think it was in a Walmart parking lot, and it was raining outside and I was on the phone with my mom crying, and she's like, are these happy tears? And I'm like, no, these are not happy tears. Like, I don't want to marry this guy. I don't like him anymore. All we do is fight. Like, I am miserable. And she's like, then don't marry him. Like, what is the point? So it was just this sense of relief almost. Like, because like I said, I was going to break up with him that morning and then we got engaged that evening. So it was a sense of relief because I felt trapped when he proposed. I was like, oh my God, I'm trapped now.
Did you also feel like he was just on a completely different page. Like, how did he think?
He told my dad, because both guys actually asked my dad, called and asked my dad, like, hey, I want to marry Kate. Like, is it okay? Do I have your blessing? And my dad's response to both of them is basically, you can ask her, but if she says no, I can't help you. Like, she's going to say what she wants to say. She's going to do what she wants to do. Nobody can tell her otherwise. So you can ask. I don't care. But the first guy had told my dad, I feel like this is just the next thing. This is just what you do. And when I found that out later, like that really solidified for me that like, okay, you made the right choice, because I don't want to marry somebody that's like, oh, well, that's just what you do.
Yeah, like this is the next phase because it has to be.
Yeah.
Versus like, I really want to do this. I'm in love with your daughter.
Exactly. So I was very relieved after that one. The second one was a lot harder to get over because we were together for so long, and we had a home together. We were making all these plans together. We had like a wall in our living room that literally said like our last name or what my last name would have been. And it was pictures of us and our families. And it was like a big family tree thing. And so that one was a little bit harder. There was a lot of sadness, and part of it goes back to, you can relate, like when you're in high school, you're like, oh my God, by the time I'm 25, I'm going to be married and I'm going to have 2 kids. And I'm sitting there in my early 30s and I'm like, oh God, another one is failing. What am I doing wrong? What did I do wrong? Like, and it kind of got to a place where I thought, am I the problem? Is it me? Like, am I not lovable? What is it here? And it took a long time for me to realize that, like, when they say, one door closes and another one opens, it was one of those. Like, that was not meant for me. I would be so miserable right now. I would probably be divorced by now. Like, everything that was kind of promised to me by this person was being broken even before we got to certain stages. So it was like, it wasn't. The
universe was looking out for you. It just was hard to feel and hard to experience, especially when it was the second time.
Yeah, because it's hard, And then at the same time, like, everybody goes through breakups, but like, I don't know a lot of other people that have gone through 2 failed engagements.
Yeah.
1 maybe, but 2, like, who do you talk to? Like, how do you relate that to somebody? How are they going to understand that? So it was interesting. Very sad, lots of tears. And I thought I was over it. I thought, like, after I moved away to a completely new city, I thought everything was great. And then that's when I called you a couple weeks back, and I was like, okay, we gotta go have a drink. Things are happening. Because my ex ended up coming to Nashville, getting drunk and texting me like, I come here all the time and think of you. And I'm like, what the hell?
You're like, don't put me back on this freaking roller coaster, please.
Please don't. And it flooded all these emotions back that, like, what if you just would have stayed? What if you just would have stayed? What if you just would have tried? You'd be married by now. You'd probably have a kid by now. You'd have all these things in your life that you don't have now. And now you're one step closer to 40 and you don't have any of those things. And it really just, like, I mean, you saw me, like, it broke me because I was like, what am I doing? And it was hard. But I think going through that made me realize, like, okay, there's so many other things that I was meant to do. Like, there's still time for me to get married. Okay, like, I get married at 40. So what? People are having babies at 45. So what? So it's hard to get out of that mindset of like, well, by this time I want to do this. But I'm starting to realize that I don't have to have a timeline necessarily. I want to get married. I don't need to put a timeline on it. Maybe I get married when I'm 70. Who knows? Like, I want to do it. I don't have to do it tomorrow.
Do you feel like, and there's just so many different like directions I want to go with this, but particularly right now, do you feel like, though, having broken off both of those engagements, do you feel like it at least helped you see, I want to get married, but I don't want to be in the wrong marriage?
Yes. Yeah, I want to get married, but I don't want it to be to the wrong person. Because with the second engagement, I actually had already gotten my dress, and that dress was not cheap. So we had spent, I think it was close to almost $6,000 on this wedding dress. And you want to talk about a sign from above? It came in, it didn't fit. It was cut incorrectly. I couldn't like zip it up. There was parts of the lace on the bottom of it that were missing, just straight up missing. And it was horrific. So I had to fly my mom from San Diego to Tuscaloosa. Then we had to drive from Tuscaloosa to Atlanta to go to the dress shop. And the bridal people were like, we'll just refund you if you want. And I was devastated, but we had already started having these problems that I was like, all right, sign from above. I'm gonna get $6,000 back now. Thank you so much. So
you did get it refunded.
I got it refunded. I didn't have to look at that dress anymore. Yeah. Although I was scrolling through photos on my phone the other day and I was like, ooh, gotta delete those. But yeah, so it was like you said, it was a sign from the universe. Everything was telling me like, hey, don't do this. Mm-hmm. Like something else is going to come for you. Don't do this.
But do you allow yourself, like, especially in those moments, like when you did call me and he had kind of reached back out and was kind of inserting him back into your life, did you remind yourself of that? Like, was that helpful for you to be like, no, there was this reason, like, I don't want a bad marriage. Like, yes, I like, there's something that you feel in your heart you so desperately want. You desperately want to be married, just like me.
Yeah.
You desperately hope to have a kid of your own, like, also same. But there's also this, like, boundary now that you won't cross to get it. Like, before I felt, especially in my early 20s, like, so desperate to have it. You know what I mean? Like, I would do anything. I'd put up with anything. There wasn't a way I wouldn't try something just in the hopes that it would work out.
Yeah.
But then once I had enough bad experiences, it was like, okay, I'm not that desperate. Like, I want it.
Yeah.
But the desperation of wanting that is gone. Did you feel like that happened for you?
Yeah. It's that you feel like you can change them kind of thing. You're like, stick around because I can change them. That, as I've gotten older, has gotten shorter. I'm really learning, like, quickly into things that, hey, if you're not doing this, okay, this ain't for me, Yeah. And putting, a limit on it. Like, hey, like with not my last fiance, but the last guy I was dating, we had dated for a couple years. And before we broke up, about 3 months before, I had said, hey, I am unhappy. We don't go out and do anything. We barely spend any time together. We live together and we barely spend time together. So, like, this has to change or we're going to be done. And he did not take me seriously. And about 3 months later, because I said, I'm giving you until the end of the year. 3 months later, we broke up. And I was like, I told you I was unhappy. I told you this was going to happen. If we didn't change, we didn't change and we're done. Mm-hmm. Because you can't, as you get older, you realize you don't have the time, like, aside from, like, your biological clock, all these other things, like, I just mentally don't have the time, like, figure
the
it out.
energy to keep putting up with stuff like that.
And I don't want to put the energy I do have into those people. Like, I'd rather put that energy into something that I want to do, something that's fun, something that makes me feel good.
And I do want to also have you talk about, because you talked about how, like, there wasn't a lot of people for you to talk to about, hopefully, like, these two broken off engagements. And that's another reason why I wanted to have you on, because hopefully, one, for you, there are other people out there that maybe can relate to you. And those conversations can start to happen for people, because that's the whole purpose of this, right? Is to feel less alone in what you're going through.
Yeah, it's a really weird, there are clubs, like, we'll call them clubs, that you're a member of and you feel like you're the only member of that club, until you say it out loud and people start going, oh my gosh, I'm in that club. So like, I'm a lot more comfortable with it now. So like, and I'll just forget, like it's not a normal thing. So sometimes like when I'm in a group of people and we're talking and it's people that don't really know me, I'll be like, oh yeah, and that failed engagement, well, 2 of them. And they're like, wait, what? And they'll be like, wait, I had a failed engagement. And so I think if you can talk about it, you'll find that there's more people that have done the same thing. They've gone through the same thing, but everybody looks at it like, oh, you failed at getting married. So like something's wrong with you. No, nothing's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong. Like everything's okay. We're just going to talk about it some more and figure it out.
Those are the wrong people to have in your circle too, right? That's how you learn.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're not meant to be a part of my life.
Yeah.
If you feel that way. Because I never once, anytime you have ever talked to me about any of that, been like, oh, well, you know, this is her fault.
Yeah.
She has issues. And every time I was like, okay, well, there was a reason.
Yeah.
You know, and like I felt very strongly about that. Like there's something better out there for you. And that's how it should be. So if anybody does out there also have somebody in their circle who's like making them feel the shame of that,
yeah, please
like leave whatever that is, or don't talk to them about it if it's blood related and you don't have a choice and they're part of your family. But that's one thing I also hope too is people just stop feeling shame for having life experiences.
Yeah. Like there's nothing wrong with it. Like I would rather have that experience than not. And I actually was talking to somebody that I'm now dating. And when we first started dating, we were talking and I was like, oh yeah, well, just like to put it all out there, like I've had 2 failed engagements. And they were like, well, that's all right. I'm divorced. I have a failed marriage. He's like, at least you didn't get to where I got. Like, and we were making a joke about it, but it's like, you know, that's just an experience. Like that's something that has shaped me to be who I am. It's maybe made me a little softer in places where I wouldn't have been soft before. And it allows me to see people in a light that maybe I didn't see them before, because we're all going through stuff. We're all dealing with something. So we have to have that little bit of grace with everybody as we're dealing throughout the day.
Yeah. And you know, it's become a thing, especially in just the dating culture of talking about dating, where everybody's like, well, once you hit 30, if you're single, like I want nothing to do with that. There's a reason you are. And it goes both ways. Girls say about women, or girls say it about men, and men say it about women. It goes both ways. And I've just never been a huge cheerleader of that, because I don't think because your age has anything to do with what you bring to the table, like just because you're at a certain point. And I think things are so much different now. Like when our parents were growing up, it was so popular to get married right away.
Yeah.
And you were barely out of your teens and you were married.
My mom was married at 21.
Yeah.
Like,
and you had all these experiences like that so young. And now it's so much more popular to wait. And I'm so glad that we're in that era.
Yeah.
Because genuinely, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, where it was like, I just got back from an amazing Europe trip where I had the time of my life and I was so free.
Yeah.
And I met so many boys and I had fun experiences.
Yeah.
And had I been married at this point in my life, I would never have those stories. I would never have those experiences to remember. I would have taken that trip with a partner and it would be vastly different. Amazing and a different experience. But I'm so thankful. Like I'm the person who is literally living up every version of the single thing. So when I do get married, it's not me talking to the single people being like, hey, I wish I was single again.
Yeah. Please
live it up for me. I'll be like, no, I did all that. I'm good. Like I lived my days.
Yeah. I did my experiences. I've done my time as a single person. Yeah. It's fun to do those things. I know that I saw on your page, like during the holidays, talking about like, it's Christmas and you want to be coupled up. This was my first Christmas alone in like 10 years.
How did that feel for you?
I was actually fine with it up until I was talking to my best friend, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to wake up alone on Christmas. And like, I said it like that because it's just what it is. And she started crying.
No, you weren't even the one crying.
I wasn't even the one crying. I'm like, why are you crying? And she's like, you're going to be alone on Christmas. And I'm like, okay, well now I'm crying because I'm going to be alone on Christmas. And I was like, why am I crying? Yeah. I'm going to get up. I'm going to make a cup of coffee. I'm going to sit in front of my pretty Christmas tree with my dogs. I'm going to make myself whatever breakfast I want to eat. Like, I'm going to have a great day, you know, like I don't have to wait for somebody else to get up so that we can open presents. And what do you want to eat? What do you want to want? Like, no, I get to do whatever I wanted to do. So leading up to it, I would say about 2 or 3 days before, I started to get a little sad because I was just like, oh, okay, like no one to open presents with or whatever. But my best friend and I had gotten each other presents. So we FaceTimed each other on Christmas morning. We opened presents with each other and like chatted, and it was great.
See, and I think it's all about a perspective shift, right? Where there's moments in it, and it's always that same, like, the two things can be true thing where, like, it's going to be true that I'm going to be sad.
Yeah.
And it's going to be true that I would like to share this with somebody. It's also true that I just had, like, the best time ever. And you just had a Christmas that you're going to remember that you got yourself through without help of anybody else. And those things and those experiences can never be replaced. Nobody can ever take those away from us.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you have other experiences, and if you had shared it with your ex-boyfriend, again, another Christmas with him, it would have been then again tainted instead of you having this new experience. Even though it was hard, even though it looked differently than what you want it to look like, it was still this, like, very empowering at the same time moment. And I think it's really cool that we're getting to experience that, because I just, that did not used to be a thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's very uncommon, and that's why you have so much of the older generations are like, when are you getting married? When are you having kids? Because that's what people did to them.
Yeah.
Whereas now we're like, no. Okay, I've learned a lot of things, and I'm good. I'm gonna wait for the right situation. If it never comes, then I'm gonna be okay. But it's just a lot of learning. It's a lot of mixed emotions constantly.
The mixed emotions part is what gets me. And actually, this is one of my favorite things that I've kind of learned along the way. And I learned it from my dad. When I was going through the first breakup, we got engaged, and then we broke up, and I moved from Alabama back to California. And then eventually we ended up reconciling, and then we broke up for good. But when I was driving back from Alabama to San Diego, my dad had flown out to drive with me. We were driving back, and we were in New Mexico. We had stopped for the night, and we were in the hotel room, and I just, out of nowhere, started like hysterically crying. And he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I failed. Like, I failed. How did I get here? I failed. And he was like, look, you can be sad about it. You can be upset about it. He said, cry about it. But tomorrow morning, when we get up and we start driving back to San Diego, there's no more crying, for tomorrow at least. Like, you can cry and you can be sad, but it can't ruin your entire day. You can't let it take over everything. And I think that that's important, because a lot of people try to, you know, hide or mask these feelings that they have because they're ashamed or whatever. But it's okay to feel that way. So, like, at Christmas time, when I got sad, I cried a little bit about it, you know, and then I was like, well, it's not going to ruin my entire day. Like, I'm still going to have a good Christmas. Like, I'm still going to do the things I want to do, you know? So I think that that's an important reminder. And I love that my dad was the person that pointed that out. Like, you can cry about it. You can have a bad day about it, but it does not get to ruin your entire day. It does not get to take up your entire day, because you got other stuff you got to do. So
yeah, it reminds me also of this saying that I love your dad, and also just love that he was like, yes, cry, but also like, let's move on. It was both. He was trying to have you have both.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of this, and I always try and do it. And I do it often, like in my daily life, especially when I have just frustrations or things are happening. And it's like this, and I'm totally going to butcher it, but it's, if you if it's not going to matter in 5 days, don't spend more than 5 minutes thinking about it. If it's not going to matter in 5 months, don't spend more than 5 days thinking about it. Like it's this 5 like quantity. Yeah. And it's like every time I think about that, nothing is ever going to matter in 5 months unless it's like something incredibly traumatic. Like most of the time what I'm crying about won't matter in 5 days, let alone 5 months. Yeah. Especially like this stupid boy who, you know, ticked me off somewhere along the line. So I also try and operate that, and I think it's a similar theory to that.
Yeah. It's okay to let it bother you. It's okay to get emotional about it. But yeah, it doesn't get to take up the entire space, and it doesn't get to ruin what you're going to do down the road.
You also are a great person to talk about our biological clock, which is so lovely as women that we get to have that.
Yes, I love this.
But this is one of your hardest parts of this whole journey, I feel like, for you, because something that you really want, probably more than anything else, is to have a kid of your own. That's something that you really want.
I do really want a kid. And I know that like as you get older, it gets harder. I know with some of the women in my family who have had babies at 40, 38, 39, that it is very difficult. I also have some things that will make it more difficult for me to get pregnant naturally. Like my uterus tilts backwards, so it's going to have a hard time doing that. I have a fibroid that's massive that kind of sits right on top of everything. So like there's all these things, and then it plays into like, okay, am I getting older and not having a kid? Am I not meant to have kids? Am I this? Like, and let me tell you, as you get older and you start dating older guys that either have kids or whatever, it's hard to find somebody that's like, oh, hey, yeah, I want a kid. I'm 42 and I want another kid. You know, my current one's 14, whatever. So it's a lot. And I keep having to remind myself that if it's meant for me, it's going to happen. Like, do I want a kid? Yes, I would love to have my own kid. I'd love to have my own kid with a partner that I'm going to stay with, though, because obviously there were opportunities for me to have a kid with somebody, but I wouldn't be with them. And my ideal would be to be with that person. But yeah, if it's meant for me, it's going to happen.
Do you feel like when we were talking at the bar that day, what I said helped you at all? Where I was like, if this is something that you feel so strongly about, like it's the universe's way of saying like you already have it. A future version of you already has this because you feel it so deeply. It just may not look in the way that you plan for it to look. Did that help? Or was it that more like, okay, I know that, but I'm just not sure?
It did, because you actually were the second person to tell me that. And, you know, when you're going through it, like you don't really see it from a wider perspective. So it's like, okay, maybe motherhood for me isn't going to look like I'm going to get pregnant and carry the kid for 9 months and then birth them. Maybe that's not what motherhood looks like for me. Like maybe it looks like something else. Maybe I meet somebody that already has a kid and that kid kind of adopts into like, I could be that, you know, stepmom version. So it is helpful, but it's like, again, it goes back to that high school version, you know, when you're thinking you're in high school and you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to have my kid and it's going to be this way. And this is how my life is supposed to be, that you get stuck in that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get out of it.
Yeah. And it's hard to remind yourself that like, there's a reason it all happened. And when you sit down and you reflect, you're like, oh, this is why. And this is why I am where I am. And I didn't have kids with X, Y, and Z because it wouldn't have looked as great as I wanted it to look, even though I would have had the kid that I wanted. It just wouldn't have been the situation you wanted. So it's easy in those situations to look back and see it, but that's a hard reminder because it's also this young version of you that still wants something to happen in the way that you dreamt it would happen.
It's hard. And I've never been one of those girls that like wants that like fairy tale thing. But there are certain things that I'm just like, yeah, I wanted the, I wanted to be married and have a husband and have a kid and like have it just be like the three of us. And, I've always been very like set on, I just want one kid and I want it to be the three of us, like running around on these little family adventures and this. And then to be at a place where it's not happened yet. I am not a patient person. That is not my strong suit. And so I've really like, especially in just like these last 6 months, have really had to learn that like, girl, calm down, be patient. And I have been being so patient with just different things. And I know that people are probably gonna be like, okay, whatever. The universe is hearing me being patient and it's paying off. Like it's paying off for me in so many different ways that when I look back, if I was just the old me where maybe I just was like, oh, whatever. And like, it wouldn't be paying off. Like I'm in such a great place now that I've learned to be patient and I've learned to just kind of, all right, we're going to go with this. Where is the universe taking me? What is it wanting me to have? Like it's a great time when you start to open up to that.
It's also really difficult to find your way there.
It is.
Because just like you're saying, like patience is really hard for you. I think patience is hard for anybody when they really want something. Because you want it, especially when you're seeing other people get it and have it and people your age and where they're at. And then it starts to go back to the timelines and then all the things you're focusing on. And you're like, okay, well, what's different about, what's the problem with me?
But you have to think though, all those people you're seeing that are getting what you want, I guarantee you it's not all sunshine rainbows.
Yeah. And we love to make it look like
that, but I guarantee you that it's not. And so like, it might look like that because yay, social media, it's going to look like, oh my God, look at this fancy ring. Like, picture perfect. There's something happening behind the scenes that's probably not super great. And you could be in that situation. And do you want to be in that situation where you're like, outwardly to the world, everything looks sunshines and rainbows, but inside you're like, God, I hate it here. Because that was me twice.
Yeah. And to probably everybody else was like, oh, she's so happy. She's engaged. And
yeah. Because there were,
story.
Thank you, Facebook, for reminding me of my engagement a couple of weeks back because it happened in December. So of course it was look back at your memories. I'm like, I don't want to. But like, I looked at them and I laughed because I was like, God, I was faking it so hard online that I was happy and this and that. And then I was going home to a house that was full of tension and turmoil and yelling and this. And it was just not a happy home. But everybody thought we were happy because like when me and my second fiance broke up, it was a literal shock to his entire family. They were like, you guys were literally just at the house 2 weeks ago and everything was fine. Like you were kissy, lovey-dovey. I'm like, yeah, we put on a great show for everybody.
Yeah,
but when we're home
right there, but closed doors is a different story.
We're not even sleeping in the same bed at home. So yeah, it's fun to romanticize it, but you have to remember like might not all be sunshines and rainbows. So where you're at's not that bad.
This is so true. It's a great reminder. I also wanted to ask you too, did you ever look into, because I know this is just a really big topic, especially going into my 30s, and it's becoming much more of a frequent talk, even at dinner with the girls. Did you ever think about freezing your eggs? Were you ever like questioning that process, becoming a single mom on your own? Was that ever a conversation for you?
If my mother had it her way, I would be a single mom right now. She always likes to bring that up, and I'm not opposed to it. I don't know if I'm there yet because again, for me, the hang up is like in my picture perfect world, it's me, the guy and the kid is a mix of the two of us. And so like, I struggle with, if I go and become a single mom and it's me and some guy over there, and then I meet my person, what happens? Because remember, I only want one kid. So is my person so I struggle with that. I have thought about freezing my eggs and going in and looking at it. It's actually one of the things that I have put down as a goal for this year to do, is to go and see what that looks like for me. I had talked about doing it last year and I kept chickening out because it's another one of those harsh realities that like, what happens if I go and they say like, yep, not for you, not in the cards. Like, I didn't want to face that last year. And it's like, okay, if I don't face it though, I'm going to just continue on thinking everything's great and then be disappointed later. So why not figure it out now and then figure out where to go from there?
Yeah, that's a really hard decision to make too, because you're right. It is this internal conflict of like, yes, I want the answer, but do I want the answer?
Yeah.
Because you are going to be faced with whatever reality comes with those results. But I do think there's power in knowledge. I think there's more power in knowledge than unknowing. Mm-hmm. And I think you can do more with that knowledge versus having nothing to go off of. But that being said, this is why it's such a hot topic at so many girl dinners, is it's such an individual experience. Mm-hmm. And everybody has a different idea of what that's going to look like. So I just wanted people to hear yours in case it can be related for them. I'm not there yet. I'm sure that could be a topic of conversation for me in a couple years.
Yeah.
And it's also a thing for me that I think I've kind of turned myself off of ever having kids, because there is a very high likelihood that I have endometriosis. Mm-hmm. And I haven't even walked down that road because I haven't even had a partner to even start thinking in that direction.
Yeah.
Because there isn't much different than you. I don't have such a strong desire that if I am by myself, I don't care to have them by myself.
Yeah.
I'll just adopt like 5,000 animals and those will be my kids.
Fine.
That works for me. But like, I do want them, if I am to find the right partner or the right situation. Yeah. So, but there is a part of me for a long time where I've always been like, I don't think I want kids. And I think this was this like subconscious Morgan deep down being like, I don't know that I can have kids. So if I just start convincing myself I don't want them, then maybe it won't be so bad when I find out that news.
It's scary. It's definitely a hard thing to tackle. And then convincing yourself that you don't want something is a lot easier than telling yourself you want it and then figuring out how to get it. Because, okay, how to get a candy bar is a lot easier than figuring out how do I get a kid? Like, especially because it's like, okay, kid by yourself, kid with somebody else, kid with it, you know? Yeah. But yeah, I didn't know that actually Priyanka Chopra froze her eggs. Mm-hmm. That's how her and her Jonas brother got their babies, or baby. I think it's just one.
Yeah, I think they just have one too.
Yeah.
Maybe two now.
I thought it was two. I don't know. I'm not up on the gossip. But yeah, I didn't realize that she did that at 30. She did it at 30. She's in her mid to late 30s now. So she did that early on and didn't tell anybody. And I've got a friend of mine that I went to high school with who's doing fertility right now. And she started an entire Instagram page that's just dedicated to her fertility journey, which is insane watching her go through this. So there's a lot on social media. So maybe, you know, you're like me where you're a little bit older than your friends. And so what you're going through is not what they're going through. There are ways to find on social media those people going through what you're going through so you don't feel so alone. So you have somebody to look at and talk to and this and that. But I think, you know, if you go and freeze your eggs, right? What's it hurting? If you decide you don't want kids anymore, okay, then you don't want kids. But if you decide that you do and you froze them when you were 30, you might have a more successful chance at having that kid at 40.
Yeah.
So
see, and this is why like it's cool to talk to your friends, because like I just know guys don't have these conversations.
Oh my God,
like
they're not having these conversations.
We're over here like, do you freeze your eggs? What are you gonna do? And they're like, did you catch that team last night?
Right?
Lose?
Did you see that football catch?
Yeah, very drastically different conversations. But it is interesting that it's just as you mature and you get older that these are now the topic of conversations. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing and like being vulnerable about all of it, not just the egg freezing in the conversation with that, but talking about the potential of having kids and the broken engagements and stuff, because those are hard conversations, but I thought they were really important. So I'm really glad you came on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It feels good to talk about it. And like, if anybody's listening and they've been through that, like, you're not alone. It happens, and it's not you didn't do anything wrong. It's not your fault. And it just means that there is something better that's going to come along for you. Because I know there's something better coming along for me. I'm ready for it.
There absolutely is. I know that there's a beautiful life, even more beautiful than the one that you dreamt up in high school. And it's waiting for you somewhere, and it's only a matter of time. I know that. I know that in my heart, gut, soul, whichever one you want to hear from. I know that.
Perfect.
Thanks again, Kate.
Thanks.